And now for something a little different. Our next video is from our friends at Project Blank. What you're about to watch is an excerpt from their production of Harawi, Chant d'amour et de mort, Song of Love and Death. The piece is about two virginal lovers who sacrifice themselves to achieve eternal cosmic joy and pleasure. Sound familiar? Think Romeo and Juliet, Tristan and Isolde. The piece combines composer Olivier Messiaen's own symbolist poetry and elements of the Quechua, an indigenous language spoken by Quechuan peoples living primarily in the Andes Mountains of Peru. So, what a better way to represent the passions of young, blind, tragic, devastating love than through opera? The piece will be performed by Project Blank's co-founders, mezzo-soprano Dr. Lesley Leytham and pianist Brendan Nguyen, featuring video art and staging by Anna Chiaretta Lavatelli. If this is your first time experiencing opera, don't worry, you'll be okay. We all started somewhere, and hopefully this little 10-minute excerpt sparks your interest in seeking out more opera in the future. Please enjoy Harawi.
Le cœur de l'horloge
Now, it is my pleasure to introduce the co-founders of Project Blank, Mr. Brendan Nguyen and Dr. Lesley Latham. Brendan Nguyen is a pianist who displays uncommon versatility as a performer, artist, and thinker. He has performed at prestigious concert halls and concert series, including the Red Cat Theater at the Disney Hall in Los Angeles, Zipper Hall, the Monday Evening Concert Series, Merkin Hall, and the Stone in New York. He is also a former member of the highly acclaimed Oberlin Contemporary Music Ensemble and has recorded with Carrier Records and Populist Records. Brennan's most recent project, The Seven Tragedies of Space Travel, was conceived as a multi-space, multimedia opera for solo pianist that mixes Western performance tradition with technology, food, and aliens who speak Vietnamese. Brennan's enthusiasm for contemporary music has led to a number of premieres and commissions, including works by dozens of notable composers, including the Pulitzer Prize winning composer Roger Reynolds. Among his many achievements, Brendan has performed at the Bowdoin International Music Festival in Maine and the Chandelier International Music Festival in New York, where he was honored as one of the most outstanding alumni since the festival's foundation. Nguyen is a graduate of the Oberlin College Conservatory of Music in Ohio, UC San Diego, and has also studied at the Conservatorium van Amsterdam in the Netherlands. He currently teaches private piano to undergraduate majors and a keyboard skills class at UCSD. Dr. Lesley Latham is a San Diego-based mezzo-soprano who focuses much of her attention on contemporary narrative vocal works, not only as a singer and actor, but as a costume designer, director, writer, and composer of performance art pieces. Her work draws from television, film, and opera, centering on the depiction of women in popular culture, thanks to a very bizarre youth spent living in Las Vegas. Dr. Latham explores the intersectionality and performativity of gender, sexuality, and institutional norms in the genres of pop, experimental, and opera. Lesley seeks to consistently extend the theoretical and technical boundaries of the voice and has commissioned dozens of premiere works. And she is currently preparing a regional premiere of a work by Austrian composer Beat Führer. She has performed as a featured artist with City Water Ensemble at San Francisco Center for New Music, the Industry Opera Company in Los Angeles, Ensemble Echoy at the Monday Evening Concert Series in Los Angeles, the La Jolla Symphony under the direction of Stephen Schick, and as a founding member of Boston's Guerrilla Opera Company. Dr. Latham earned her Bachelor of Music degree in voice performance from the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, and a Master of Music degree in voice performance from the Boston Conservatory. She earned a Doctorate of Musical Arts degree in contemporary music performance from the University of California, San Diego, where she developed her interdisciplinary work under the guidance of the late violinist Janos Najewski and video artist Tara Knight. Welcome to you both.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for
Our
having us.
pleasure. Yeah.
Sure thing, sure thing. So for some people, this would have been their first experience in opera, and I'd love for you to just, for those that maybe weren't able to pull or they were looking at one thing and then the other and reading at the same time, tell us a little bit about how this piece connects to the theme of the night, the generations and sacred rituals. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Sure. Well, this work was written by Olivier Messiaen in the early part of the 20th century, which was like forever ago at this point. And he was interested in this myth or this old story from indigenous peoples of Peru, and most cultures have some version of this myth where these two young lovers and kind of they decide to cross the veil and go to the other side via
Mm-hmm.
suicide or a love death of some kind. Like the Tristan myth is, I think, the most
Like Tristan
prominent
and
one.
Isolde or Romeo and
Hmm.
Juliet.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
yes, exactly,
Hmm.
exactly. That in death they decide that they're going to kind of merge and be these cosmic beings forever, and they can kind of be together and just forever. And so
Young
yeah,
love.
I know.
Yeah.
That's it's cute.
Coolish. Yeah.
We all did it. Don't
We've
lie.
all been there.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, so that's the foundation of this piece, and in this part of the story, the narrative. So this is we staged it as an opera, but it's actually a song cycle. So it's not intended ever to really be performed as a narrative work, even though it is a narrative work. It tells a through line of what happens when they take the potion and when they are changed and turn into stardust. He takes also these cues from Quechua, the language of several South American regions, and turns it into this kind of this physical transformation. And the
So it's
point,
performed in French. I saw some
mm-hmm.
French, he inserted some Quechuan words as well,
Yes,
and
Mhm.
yeah.
poetry. Hmm.
Yeah, well, not exactly poetry. He just sort of takes some of the text and use it almost like on onomatopoeia. Like there's this use of the word pia 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 that is it's supposed to replicate the sound of ankle bells
Oh,
from
sure.
dancing rituals and other things like mapa nama is like this sort of incantation that returns over and over again. Kai pipas, mai pipas, and kachi kachi, which is like this sort of grasshopper, this feeling of little excitement and electrical energy, and so
Mm.
he's using some Quechua as a way to kind of help transform from the earthly to the celestial, which is
Mm.
pretty clever.
Ooh, that's so cool. That's so
Yeah.
beautiful. I mean, I'm already imagining it in this grand production now in my mind's
Mm-hmm.
eye. So that you bring up something interesting too, because, and I want to be that kind of middle ground. I do love opera, but I want to be that kind of middle ground for those that have never experienced opera, because, what we do well here at Vanguard Culture is that we bring together communities that typically never intersect. And
Yeah.
so for some people, this will be their first introduction to opera. Is that it's not always necessary for you to understand what the singer is saying,
Not
right?
always. No.
Yeah, and so that's the beauty of opera, is that you're really there to feel the feeling, to experience it all as a whole. And so if you don't speak French and you don't speak Quechuan, it's okay. Luckily we have our subtext there. um, so I want to get into your journey, both of you, and we have your bios, so you don't need to sort of tell us your bios, but tell us about what first sparked your interest in the genre of opera, and for you, the music in general. Is it something that's like a legacy passed on to you that was very important in your family structure, or is it something that you found or happened upon?
You first,
Uh,
Wayne.
you,
Brendan, you want to
yeah,
share?
for me, yeah, I grew up in, I mean, nobody in my family was a professional musician by any stretch. My parents loved to sing karaoke. That's a very Vietnamese thing. But my mom happened to be back in Vietnam before she became a refugee. She was many things. Among them was a pretty well-known singer in Vietnamese nightclubs,
Hmm.
which she actually continued to do uh, when she immigrated in the Seattle area, which is how my parents actually met. I'm the only one in my family who was born in the States. But yeah, my dad basically stalked my mom at the nightclubs and would like send her flowers, and then she just kind of gave in. And yeah, and then I also have two older half sisters, and they actually were taking piano lessons when they were in high school. They're much older than I am, so I was about 3 or 4 when they were taking piano lessons, and eventually they quit. And so my parents never bothered to, they felt like maybe I would just quit too. But my sisters taught me. They were the
Hmm.
first ones that they taught me what they were learning. And then by the time I was like 5 or 6, I kept going back to the piano, and they put me in lessons. And after that, my bio, and then you know, I guess.
Yada yada
But
yada.
that's kind of like
Yada yada
yeah.
yada.
But as a pianist, us pianists, we're so there's so much piano literature. There's like more piano literature than anyone really knows what to do with. So we really get stuck into our own world of like pianism. And so I wasn't really exposed to opera until college. And I went to a really great school that had a really great opera program with some legendary teachers, and that's where I was first exposed to it. As an accompanist for my colleagues there. and I
And you
sat in
knew at
on.
that point that opera was going to be a bigger part of your life? I mean, was there an
Oh,
aha moment for you?
no, actually, absolutely not. I mean, it was kind of a you. I think in music conservatory, all pianists are it's
Required.
required to at some point accompany an opera singer. It's like this hazing ritual, you know. Um, but
And it's not
but
always pleasant for the
it's
opera
not always
singers too.
yeah yeah. You learn a lot about how to
Touche.
interact with
Oh
the people.
yeah.
Yeah. But what was amazing was witnessing lessons with these amazing pedagogues, and I learned just so much. I didn't know like breathing was such an issue with operatic singing, and all the technique involved, and just how like they would actually every year I think they would do this thing where they would take pictures of their larynx and they'd have to like look at it. I don't know, Lesley could talk about that more, but
Hmm.
just like the lengths that operatic singers go to train their bodies to
Yeah.
do this miraculous
The
thing, which is to use
physicality
their
of it is
yeah, to
what's
use their
impressive.
skull as a like to I mean and yeah, to compete with like a giant grand piano in terms of sheer
Right.
volume,
And
it's amazing what they
orchestras.
can do, and orchestras,
And a
yeah.
stage full of more singers,
Yeah.
more opera singers. There's a lot to fight against.
Yeah, so I
Yeah.
luckily got that exposure in school, and then that continued on. I always worked with singers after that, and then certainly working with Lesley for the last decade plus.
Decade.
I've learned so much from her, and it's been a really amazing journey with her. And she's just so easy to work with, and I don't have to
Yeah.
pull back my volume for her because her instrument is louder than mine most of the time anyway. So yeah,
Yeah.
Not
as
always.
much as I try.
Lesley, tell
Yeah.
us about your aha moment if you had one, or how why opera?
Well, that is the question, I think, because there's so much kinds of singing out there that has spoken to me as powerfully as opera singing has in the past. And my sort of family legacy with music is that my parents were in, sort of amateur, garage guitarists, and they played right weekly with my cousins would come over, and they would have like these Saturday jam sessions, and I was their resident Janis Joplin. Like I would be
Nice.
16, and they're like, Lesley, we're ready for Bobby McGee. And so that I thought, and I was in choir and I was doing musical theater in middle school and high school, and my choir teacher in high school, this man named Michael Kirshner, who's now in the Bay Area, but he kind of saw a little something, and he planted some kernels for me that I are very easily traceable to him. And he started to kind of to expose me to different kinds of musics, not even just opera, but also experimental music and experimental pop music,
Mhm.
and how that these two worlds could converge. And he and I was always a pretty good musician. I enjoyed sight reading. I'm like that kind of a dweeb. And so
I
I
so envy
thought,
you. Sight reading is
I
so
loved it.
hard.
It's so fun.
Yeah.
I was never into video games, but that kind of like real time problem solving I can do. Um, but like, yeah, so I thought I was just gonna, move to Nashville or like LA and just be a studio singer. Just give me some music, I'll sing whatever part you want, just pay me and I can
Hmm.
go home. But he basically told me, he's like, no, you're gonna be an opera singer. Just go and do this thing. And so I listened, and he was super right. Yeah, but yeah, so that was kind of my in, and I think the hook, like the was seeing one in person, because
Do you remember
it's
that first opera? That
oh for sure
or
it was Rigoletto, and it was this like a Russian opera company was touring, and it oh no, it was Frederica von Stade. She was doing a concert, like she was touring for a record, and we're in Las Vegas, so you stop in Las Vegas. And so she came to UNLV. We all got our student rush tickets, and I'm sitting there in the very front row of this giant auditorium, and she's spitting all over us in the before times.
yeah.
And she it was amazing.
Flash
I
zone.
had yes, exactly. I had never experienced the type of like physical sympathetic vibration that you get when you're in the same room with somebody using their voice in this very specific way. And it was just, that was very, 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 very moving. And it
That's
was
definitely one of the things that
very
we
sad.
should mention too, is, opera, it's something you have to experience in person. It just
Yeah.
is,
Yeah.
you really can't understand the power that it takes to exude that kind of sound until you're
Mm-hmm.
in the presence of it. And so video certainly doesn't do it justice ever in any
Ever.
scenario.
Yeah.
But yeah, and so you decided to start your own company. You've known each other now for 10 years, you said. And so was there something that was like missing in the larger opera community or larger opera companies that they were not providing, or opportunities that were not happening, that you decided you needed to start your own company?
Um, yeah, and I don't know that it's specific to opera. I mean, I think that like so when you study any sort of art history, whether it's visual art, music, sonic arts, or anything, dance or anything, you understand that these artists that are making things are not doing them in vacuums. They're not separating themselves from the other art forms. They are always in communication with and responding to what else is happening, who's writing poetry at the time, what is happening in the theater world, what's happening in in modern dance or whatever it is, ballet, all of it. So these people are just sort of like creating these communities, that I think that in the United States it has, I think, more to do with the institution of the big, the concert hall, and it becomes this sort of austere thing. It's something that is a little bit removed from a lived current experience. But that's not to say that that isn't still happening, right? So
Mm-hmm.
like composers nowadays and dancers nowadays and poets and writers and prose and drama and all the instruments, we're still hanging out and we're still making stuff. And I felt that that was really nurtured at a place like UCSD, where you come to get your graduate degree and you meet a whole bunch of people who are just as weird as you, and then you just make and make and make and make and make, and then it ends. And then we had to sort of decide.
Yeah.
You decide what you're going to do next. You decide if you're going to go to LA and make there. You decide if you're going to go to New York or to Europe or back or Australia and find your communities there. But I like it here. It's really nice. And I didn't want to leave.
You're like,
It's,
yeah, tacos.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, tacos.
I
Yeah,
mean, tacos win.
yeah.
Every
Summer all the
time.
time.
Every time.
No brainer.
Yeah,
That's
so
so
that, I
funny.
mean, I think that was like the impetus, right? That we both had realized that, hey, we're both kind of staying, aren't we? And so, well, let's just keep doing what we have been doing
Yeah.
this whole time, just not
So,
at school anymore.
but what you've created is different than the traditional opera experience.
Mm.
You produce a full experience, and if you ever, now that the world is starting to open up back up, I highly encourage you all to follow Project Blank and try to experience this in person, which is really very exciting. You do very immersive type of opera where you have projections of by independent visual artists, and experimental music mixed in. And so there's a lot going on. Tell us about your practice, or like what it all includes, what kind of inclusivity practices you have when it comes to opera.
Go ahead, B.
Oh, well,
Everything.
yeah, the world is like changed so much, and us along with it. But we always, it's in the name of our silly company, Project Blank, that every project is really um, thought up from the ground up, and every detail, no matter how trivial, even like the way audience members enter into a performance space, what they experience, like whether they get program notes or not, or how they receive this and that, and where they're sitting, all of those things we try to consider thoroughly. We spend so much time discussing things like that, um, and uh, and of course, in rethinking trivial matters, we have to rethink the big things too. And that was something for us that it was a bit of a, I'm not a slap in the face, but we definitely had to take a look at ourselves and realize that like we too are prone to defaulting to performing works by, you know, dead
Dead
white
white
guys,
guys.
or you know, yeah,
Yeah.
and usually like the first people that we would think of to hire to work with are like, you know, like our white male friends who are great and they've written amazing
Yeah.
pieces for us, uh, but we also have incredible artist friends and creators of all, you know, shapes and sizes and colors, and you know, we've made a pretty concerted effort to uh, you know, practice what we're preaching, and to showcase these amazing artistic voices. So we really are excited for our, you know, upcoming season, and we're exploring a lot of really, you know, fascinating topics around identity and immigration and workers' rights. And yeah, we hope that that shines through in our work. But yeah, but we're constantly, we don't want to be pinned down in any way, so we're always kind of rethinking everything from the ground up.
And
Yeah.
also thinking how, sorry, how like Schubert, for example, that the works that we do, that we commission, and the people that we work with are in conversation with the older musics, right?
Yeah,
And that these, again, these things don't exist in silos. They're
yeah,
our legacy as musicians is because of people like Barbara Strutzi and Franz Schubert and Clara Schumann and all this historicity of the canon, that we can kind of play on that and sort of and have these works communicate with each other, modernity
Mhm.
and, like, you know, the
Mhm.
French, I guess they say the ancien, like the
Mhm.
ancient
Ancient
music.
ancien.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, it transforms through generations, and I find that really fascinating. I mean, what do you think is your responsibility to the legacy of the traditional opera canon? What would you like to see, I guess, from the next generation of opera creatives?
Oh my God, just inclusivity, you know, that we're always sort of like Brendan was saying, defaulting to the dead white guys, and Puccini is great, it's great, it's great, it's great. But also,
but
but also,
yeah,
there
And
are
also, right.
so many women, so many people of color that have just been completely ignored. So many people of non cis gendered bodies, and that all of these, and able bodies and ability and disability, that all of these bodies have been creating things forever,
Mhm.
and that is just, you have to kind of the open up the canon, and allow some others in, for crying out loud.
Mhm.
Come
Mhm.
on. That's, yeah.
Um, a question for you about so someone who's never experienced or been exposed to opera in the past. What would you say to them? What would you say to them about how to experience it? You know, some people are afraid. They're like, "Oh, that's too fancy. I don't understand it. Too hard to, you know, tap into a million reasons. I've never heard it before. It's too expensive
Too
usually. You know, there's a lot
expensive.
of
yeah,
reasons why people don't get exposed to
Yes.
opera. And there's every type of opera too. I mean, this little nugget is just one little piece, but
Hmm.
there's so many ways that you can experience opera. So what would you say to someone that's maybe a little bit afraid to jump in or gain
Just
access
jump
to it?
in. Yeah,
just
jump
jump
in.
in. Yeah,
Find your access point. If it's maybe not San Diego Opera, if that feels a little out of reach, because it is a higher price point. It is expensive. It can be very
yeah,
expensive. But there are so many groups, especially in Southern California, in San Diego and Orange County. Long Beach Opera is doing amazing things, that are much more accessible if it is a cost thing. But that when you're going into an opera completely cold or completely blind, or maybe without much frame of reference, I think you're kind of poised to get so much more out of it than those that are listening, for, oh well, the B flat was a little, that people are going
Yeah.
in with their scores and librettos and saying, oh well, she used the wrong word, like there's,
Hmm.
you're open to an
Yeah.
experience in a way that I don't think, that I envy sometimes.
I
um
was gonna say, I envy. If you're listening to this right now and you're on the fence about going to opera, look, we're professional musicians here. We envy the tabula rasa that is like
yeah,
your inexperience with opera. Like
let's
you just have
go.
to dive in and like put your phone away, like
Yeah.
be present for it,
Be
and just
present.
let it,
Yeah.
yeah, and like I wouldn't try too hard to try to get everything because I
It's too
think you made
much.
a really, there's
It's
so
too
much, right?
much.
I mean, people study these operas like, left and right, up and down, and like there's
Yeah,
still more to understand about them. But I think
yeah.
Susanna, you said something earlier about, oh, shoot, I forgot. You said something about, uh, yeah, about not needing to understand everything,
Yeah.
and like embracing the visceral kind of experience of being there. And the thing is, music essentially is in the abstract its own experience, and you don't have to understand the words of the libretto. The music also carries the story forward as well, in the abstract way that music does. So you can just let that journey, be your carpet ride.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there something that they should be paying attention to or that they should walk in with or just really just jump
I
in
just jump
free?
in,
Yeah.
yeah, and just pay
Okay.
attention to how your body is
Yeah.
responding. That I
Right.
was
Or your
saying,
emotions.
your
Yeah.
emotions, and just sort of suspend. You need to suspend your disbelief a little bit.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Uh,
Yes,
that we're
because they're
not.
grand,
It's
tragic,
grand.
It's right.
sad
Yeah.
Yeah.
things.
We don't
Yeah.
communicate this way IRL. It's not,
Yeah.
it's not supposed to be that. It is this fantasy. It is and we can suspend our disbelief watching Avengers movies, like for crying out loud.
Yeah.
Those are operas. they're
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
they're epic. There's these
Yeah.
battles of about virtue and love and loss and history and place in history, and I think that all of the narrative of these operas is so familiar, and it's probably more
Hmm.
familiar than people quite even realize. But then just the experience, really, just the experience of being in a room with these bodies that are making this noise, that it vibrates in your body when you're
It
hearing
does.
it, and you can feel like your chest and shoulders and your head just sort of, it's like woo woo, it just sort of, it literally washes over you, and just sort of,
Yeah. Let it happen. Yeah.
just let it happen, just
Yeah.
roll with
Yeah.
Ooh,
it.
Yeah.
love,
Just let
love,
it
love.
happen. Yeah. Yeah.
No, this is great. This is great. So if you are somebody who loves epic, epic stories, epic
Yeah.
adventures, the opera might just be the thing for you. So I want to talk about sacred rituals and are there sacred rituals in opera? I mean, I'm a theater person, so there are lots of sacred rituals that happen, backstage as we're preparing and all that
Yeah.
Mm.
stuff. What are sacred rituals that musicians and opera people do before they're about to perform? If you can share. I know they're
Oh.
all weird. Oh,
Yeah.
we'll
You
start
just freak
there.
out. Yeah. You just freak out all day.
I mean, I cry a lot from the pressure. There's usually a good hour's worth of weeping because it feels overwhelming, and then you have the self doubt, and I can't do it, and my body isn't feeling right today, and I have to somehow troubleshoot something that is like, oh, there's just too much pollen in the air today. Great, I have to deal with that today. Or there's not enough humidity, or I woke up weird and I have a stomach ache, and so for us, and when we're putting our bodies through the ringer, and Brendan is not immune to this either, because he really puts his whole body into
Mm-hmm.
his instrument as well, and sometimes there's blood involved
Sometimes there's
on his
blood
little
and there's a
fingers.
lot of pain. Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
it's just a matter of assessing solving problems, and being able to solve a problem in a way that doesn't make you feel bad about yourself, and say that, oh, what the hell am I doing? Why did I decide to do this to myself every single time? That it can be an easy shame spiral to go down when a problem arises. And so I think the ritual to getting to the downbeat is a matter of like shifting your focus to really consider the task at hand.
Mm-hmm.
It is a job. It is emotional. It is really, really debilitating at times. It is intimidating at times. It is overwhelming. It makes you feel like less of a person sometimes. But there's like a euphoria that kind of comes out when you're this laser focused to get okay, the next word is this, this rhythm is this, and then you're just sort of on the train, and then it ends. And then you have a
Mm-hmm.
beer.
Yeah.
And then you
Or
do
two.
it
Yeah.
again.
Brendan, do you have I mean, you can speak for your own experience, but is there like a sacred ritual that happens before you're about to perform?
Yeah, kind of. It's funny because the before the first performance of Harawi, just what that was like two weeks ago. I picked up Lesley on the way down to the venue, and I think we were both in the exact same state where we're like, I don't remember how to do this. Like we haven't
Hmm.
performed in over a year. Like I'm nervous. And you seem to forget kind of the ritual almost.
Mhm.
Like you kind of remember things that you do in an academic sense, but like the muscle memory of performing all the time just wasn't there anymore. But yeah, I do have a ritual for myself, which is I walk through I walk through everything I'm about to do in a really calm paced manner. Um, and so that I'm just kind of, it's almost like a form of visualization
Mhm.
right beforehand. And it really helped. It worked. I wasn't sure if it would because I wasn't sure if anything would work that day, but I just kind of stuck to my guns and did that. And um, but to what
Did you
Leslie
have
was
an
saying
audience?
before,
Was there an audience at the taping?
Just the
yeah.
crew?
Oh, and just the crew, yeah,
Yeah.
The
yeah, and then
crew.
the online audience, yeah.
Yeah.
It somehow like it's still really nerve-wracking,
Oh yeah.
but it's a really fascinating feeling because there's all this anxiety, and then when we're doing live video, there's all these countdowns, we got like 15 to downbeat, and then 10 minutes, and then there's like a 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, and like all of that is really stressful, like just hearing the
Yeah.
countdown, it's really stressful, but uh, I just remember the moment we began our first note together, like all of that for me just kind of wafted away, and I was
It's
just
magic.
performing again. Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, I know I can only I'm a jazz singer, and so I had a jazz band, and I'm familiar with that moment when you're like, do I know the words? Do I know the words? Do I know the words? And then you start singing, and there they go.
The body
It's
knows.
like the body
Yeah,
Yeah.
just
yeah,
remembered
Just
yeah.
where
You
to
just gotta
remembers.
let
go.
it. Yeah,
And
And there's this great
yeah.
like frenetic energy between the two of us. So he'll play through the whole thing at like half speed, really, really slowly, and mine is the opposite. I will speed through it twice. Just it's like how to feel, just sort of like going, and then I'm
Yeah.
pacing. Mine is just like, and his
Yeah.
is like, here we are, we're
This
here
is why
now.
you
yeah.
balance
I
each other
yeah.
so
I know.
well.
Yeah. I try to just like zen out. I'm just like,
Yeah.
okay. I just need to prove
So
that I can walk through each moment, and then I'm
Yeah.
fine. Yeah.
So I have another final question for you both, and thank you for sharing these lovely stories. We're talking about generations, and we're talking about legacy and all of those things. What is the best piece of advice or the best thing that you've learned from someone who's a generation away from you or more, older or younger? It could be. I mean, I'm fascinated by the young people right now.
Yeah.
I mean, the next generation, I'm learning so much and I'm very excited about that. What's your most exciting, unique, interesting piece of advice or thing you've learned from someone a generation away from you or more?
Mine is and memory is a weird thing. I think this came from him, but it could have been somebody else. But I think this was from Michael Kirshner in high school, and he would say, he is a very snarky and sarcastic human, and when we're in a rehearsal, he'll always say, "Never louder than lovely," which was always just like, okay.
Louder than lovely, is that what
Never
it said?
louder than lovely, right? And
Oh,
so, but for me, I have that has been a bit of my mantra, because as singers, we learn by imitation, and we learn by copying, and we learn by trying on other people's voices and seeing which ones fit. And of course, none of them fit because it's not you, it's not your body.
mm,
And so I was at that moment in my baby days of even just physiological development. The voice isn't really fully developed and it's different for everybody. But mine didn't really show up until I was in my 30s. I was like 31, 32. And then I was like,
Mm.
oh, here we are. Okay, this is what it's like. But for him, it was this idea that you need to understand what your body can do at this very moment and accept that this is what your body can do for you at this moment right now, and understand that boundary to say, I see you, I'm going to go to this,
Mm.
and then maybe you can work on exceeding that little boundary and then pushing that a little further and then a little further, but understanding listening to what your body is telling you is possible. And
Mm.
that stuck with me for a very, very long time.
Yeah, it's great advice. How about you?
Yeah, actually, mine happened quite recently. It was more of a validation of a very simple lesson, I guess. But so shortly after the show had ended, our production ended, my body kind of shut down. I got really sick. Actually, just got over like bad cough, and it just happened to coincide with the weekend that my parents from Seattle were visiting, and it's the first time I'd seen them in, since the pandemic, since before the pandemic, and um, of course, like I'm sick and bedridden, and mommy comes to take care of me, and I'm eating delicious chicken soup and everything. And at one point she was doing my laundry. Yeah, because I was just like useless. And and as she was moving things from the washer to the dryer, I quickly remembered that like my one of my favorite like luxury polos was in there, and that it should not be in the dryer. And I'm like, oh mom, can you pull the Burberry polo out? And she's like, okay, fine. And I'm like, it's the black polo. But the thing is, that's like all I own is black stuff. So she's like pulling stuff, putting in the dryer. And then I realized like I feel bad. I'm just like, no, mom, don't worry about it. It's fine. It's fine. And she just muttered under her breath. She said, like, no, I'm not gonna give up. I'm not gonna give up.
Oh.
And there was this determined, and it reminded me of her immigration story, which we can say for another time. But
Mm.
my mom is a freaking warrior and survived some of the worst things any human should survive. And to see in that kind of, that moment where she's just trying to fish out a
A
polo
shirt.
for me,
Yeah.
it like that drive to not give up um, was still there. That same one that allowed her and my sisters to survive the Vietnam War. And I took that moment in my like pathetic sickness
Hmm.
to remind myself like that I should never give up,
It
and I don't
resonated
think
for you
anybody
for
should.
sure.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm so glad you shared that. Thank you for sharing. Mothers are special. And what I repeat over and over again in front of my children is something that I'm very thoughtful. I try to be thoughtful about when I'm trying to teach a lesson or something, and never giving up. We're not quitters. We're not quitters here,
yeah,
and we're not bullies. We're the people that
Hmm.
stand up to bullies. There's a lot
yeah,
of things that I always bring about, that I hope that they it seeps in, I hope. And so
Persistence.
it
Yeah.
gives me hope by you saying that's not something that she just said while she was doing laundry. It's something that I'm sure she
yeah,
said over and over your whole life, and so it
yes,
clearly
yeah,
resonated for you, but it was a reminder that you needed. And so
yeah,
that's so
yeah,
beautiful. That's so
Yeah.
beautiful. Thank you for sharing these, you guys.
yeah.
Tell us, is there anything else that we need to know about Project Blank? Anything that we're going to put all the information in the chat on how to get in, how to visit your site and follow you on social media and all those good things.
Great.
What do we need to know about Project Blank that we haven't already shared? Is there anything?
Uh, a season announcement is coming,
It's
and
coming.
so
Okay.
look out for that for next season, which will of course be anxious to get back to in person,
Hmm.
We
and
will
in
be in
person.
person.
We will be in
Yeah,
person,
yeah,
do so
God willing.
safely, and yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah,
um,
Show up in
it'll
person so you
be
can feel those lovely vibrations of the
feel it.
music and sound
yeah,
Yeah,
surround you. Thank you both so much
yeah.
for spending time with us today. Have a good rest of your
my pleasure.
afternoon. We'll
Thank
see the
Thanks for
rest of the
having
show.
us.
you.
Sure
Thank
Yeah,
thing.
you.
thanks.
Bye.